In this video, we're going to find out how once this ultra budget king AMD FX 8350 platform will perform in late 2020, and also get an idea how bad it'll bottleneck the RTX 2080 Ti, and also give you an idea how will it perform with the upcoming RTX 3070. But before that, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe down below, and thank you for watching. Now, before I get into this video, I'd like to ask everyone to please go ahead and hit the like button down below. It really helps to grow the channel, and I really appreciate it. Also, if you're new to my channel, go ahead and subscribe and hit the bell notification. That way you can stay tuned to my latest videos. So without further ado, let me get into this review. This AMD FX 8350 Black Edition is now 8 years old, and it features 8 cores and 8 threads, base clock 4 GHz, max boost clock up to 4.2 GHz, 8 meg level 2 cache, 32 nanometer technology, and 125 watt default TDP. Now, this specific platform here is very near and dear to me. For a lot of us back in the day that could not afford the Intel 2nd, 3rd, and 4th generation i5s or i7s, which were, noticeably more expensive than this processor here. That's what we had, and I was one of them. I either had this one or even the FX 6300 chip combo because of the price. And you know what? Back in the day, it did its job. You were able to play games and enjoy yourself, and it was pretty good for multitasking as well. But it always would get crushed by any of the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th generation i5s and i7s when it came to overall performance, I think, especially in gaming. So a lot of us out there are big fans of AMD, and we kind of held on to this platform for many years. And that's what we're going to find out. If it's still quite relevant today in late 2020, especially with all these graphics cards coming out. That's why I want to test this setup here with the RTX 2080 Ti and find out how bad this platform will bottleneck, and also give you an idea with the upcoming RTX 3070, which should be out to public in about a day or two. And from seeing all the reviews that just came out today, it's quite evident that the RTX 3070 is on par with the 2080 Ti. So here we'll determine if it's time to upgrade, or do we keep this platform for years to come. Now, to be honest, of course, this thing is going to bottleneck on 1080p, that's for sure. But, with some of these higher-end graphics cards, you would expect a lot of us now to game in 4K, and I think that's going to be the most important test here, how well it'll do in 4K gaming. So let me get into this build here, go over all the parts and all the settings that I'm going to do to try to get the most out of the system and to get the best possible results. So for the motherboard here, I'm actually using something more modern, and this is towards the last generations of the AM3 Plus motherboards. This motherboard actually came out back in 2016, many years after this processor originally came out. And it's a very good motherboard, and if you were ever to try to get into this old processor, I definitely would recommend you to get into the 970 platform. So this is the Gigabyte 970 gaming SLI motherboard, and it has a lot of features for its time. It does feature the option for the M.2. I am not using it for this build. I didn't have an extra M.2 laying around, but it does support it, and also supports the USB 3.1. That's right. This thing has a lot of features for its time. And it's the SLI compatible motherboard. Of course, not many people would even use that feature. Now for the RAM, I'm using a 16 kit here, which is made by Evga, DDR3 2400 megahertz, and I have it enabled on the XMP profile, so they are being used at the correct speed, 2400 megahertz, Also, I have the processor overclocked right now at 4.4 gigahertz. Seems to be the most stable for me when it comes to gaming. I try to go a bit higher to 4.5, 4.6, but the games tend to crash. I'm not the best overclocker, but I don't think there's a huge difference between 4.4 and 4.6 when it comes to gaming. For the cooler, I'm using the Evo 212. It's a very good cooler. Definitely does its job to keep this processor cool. No issues at all. Very happy with this performance when it comes to this platform. Now, when it comes to the power supply, I have this high power 800 watt power supply. It's not the best power supply, but it does its job. It is 80 plus bronze rated, and it has all the cables needed to run this setup here. Also, when it comes to the drives, I don't know if you could see on the bottom right there, I am using a 120 gigabyte SSD for the boot drive made by Philips. This is a very cheap budget SSD. I picked it up for 15 bucks at the local micro center. I wasn't gonna go all out on this build here. And for the secondary drive, which is on top, underneath the DVD drive, is a 500 gig Seagate SATA drive for additional storage. You know, and also wanted to talk to you about this case here. Now, this case is a Cyber PowerPC. So I believe this was originally a Cyber PowerPC. It needed a little bit fixing and you know, cleaning up to revise it to its original look, or even make it better. So this is what I've done. And if some of you guys have this case or consider to give it a clean modern look, let me just show you something really quick. Now, this case came with all these caddies that will be up front. Now, they're not removable, so I popped them off. They're all held by these metal rivets, and you could see, like, I had to, like, you know, bend it a little bit and pop them out to give that clean look and the better airflow. So overall, I changed a little bit of look of this case. As you know, a lot of the modern cases are more opened, and to give that better airflow. So as you could see, I had the mounting possibilities for the SSD drive on the bottom, so that's what I did for the main drive. And for the additional drive, I got an extra caddy that goes in there, a 5.25 adapter that goes underneath the DVD drive, and that's where I was able to install the additional SATA drive, because that's all I really needed was just, you know, two spots for the drives, and I'm happy with that. That's just an idea if you ever want to make your case a little bit more modern to give that cleaner look, because with these caddies here, it really covers those fans, and you don't really get to see that RGB look as good as it's now. Now, this is a window paneled case, and I'll show you towards the end there after this the final look of it with everything inside. But I am very happy with this case. I've really got it for a really cheap price, for only 20 bucks. Cleaned it up a little bit, did that little modification, and I think it really looks nice. So yeah, so that's what we're gonna do. That's pretty much it for the build here. Like I said, I'm gonna have it overclocked. We're gonna test out a bunch of games and see if this thing is still worth it. So without further ado, let's get into those testing benchmarks. So stay tuned. So the first benchmark I'm going to show you here is Cinebench R15 on the single core. And as you can see, the score is 106. That's a pretty low number, and I do have this processor overclocked to 4.63 gigahertz, as you could see. And yeah, that's a pretty low score for a single thread, that's for sure. Basically, an Intel dual core single core performance is higher than that. and that was always the problem with the FX chip. Unfortunately, even though you know, it had the 8 cores and everything, but this overclocked and all, the single core performance was less than those generation dual cores. But it is what it is. So let's move on to the next benchmark. Alright, so now we have here a CPU Z benchmark. As you could see, I am clocked to 4.6 gigahertz, and we're at the core voltage 1.416. That's actually on auto voltage, so that's what it brings it up to. Pretty much standard for this overclock. And now let's take a look when we bench it. Let's bench it against a, you know, a modern processor like, let's say, 3950X, single core, of course, just to get an idea of how weak the single core is on this processor. Wow, there you have it, 49%. So the performance is like half of the 3950X, just to give you an idea of the single core performance. Now let's bring something you know, less. Okay, so this is what I wanted to show you, the dual core. Check this one out. And that's what I was saying. We are talking about, I mean, this is a 12-year-old processor, something like 11, 12 years old, something like that. The E8500 3.1 gigahertz dual core Intel. This is what I was talking about, and it still beats it out on a single core performance. Look at that, by 4%, even though the FX 8350 is overclocked to 4.6 gigahertz. And that was always the issue with this processor. Very unfortunate, but I just wanted to show you that and remind you guys what was the big difference between Intel and the AMD processors back in the day, which of course you're well aware that all changed when the Ryzen chips came out and totally changed everything. Now remember that before Ryzen chips, this was one of the top tier processors. Unbelievable. Alright guys, so stay tuned for the gaming test benchmarks. Alright, so I'm going to start off with Horizon. Let's take a look at the settings here. 1080p full screen VSync off, and we are on ultra settings here with motion blur off. Now let me go over all the stuff that I've done here. Now as you can see, we are using the FX 8350 chip, and yes, I was able to overclock it to 4.6 as you seen the previous benchmarks. So as of now, the games are running at 4.6 gigahertz. This is a DirectX 12 title, so this kind of gives you an idea how you know, this platform runs with DX12. And yeah, these are the kind of frame rates we're getting. Now there's definitely a bottleneck because with the RTX 2080 Ti, with some of the newer you know, processors, you should be able to get, I don't know, 140, 150 in this area here. So yeah, there's definitely a bottleneck here. And the RAM that I'm using here is 16 gigs of 2400 megahertz, but I just realized when I went back on the previous overclock, the maximum you can run here on the XMP profile is 2133, so I am running them at 2133 megahertz on the speed here with, once again, 4.6 gigahertz overclock. So you know, as far as the game being smooth, it plays good. Really no issues here. But like I said, with this card you should be able to get higher FPS, that's for sure. Alright, so now let's switch to the 4K. Let's see how it looks here. Alright, so once again we are on Ultra and the Ultra presetting here.
There's something up ahead. What's that? A dead person. There's something shiny there.
Well, that's pretty decent frame rates. Now, from what I remember with this graphics card, the best results that I've seen is about 10 frame rates more on the average. High 60s or so on 4K with these settings. So really, it's not bad at all when it comes to 4K. Again, very smooth, no issues here, no stuttering, nothing like that.
Changed color. The door changed color too. It did it.
Now I forgot to mention, unfortunately with these AMD FX chips, you're never able to see the clock speed in the MSI Afterburner. That's why you don't see it here, but it is 4.6 gigahertz. You've seen the previous benchmarks. I was never able to you know, to get that showing.
This way is the best I can do.
Happy birthday, Isaac. Daddy sure does love his little big man. Why did they die here? What happened to them? He found me. Ross found me.
Alright, and that wraps up for this game, so on to the next one. Now in this Star Wars game, you're definitely going to see a humongous bottleneck on 1080p here. It's incredible. So let's start off with the settings. Okay, so 1080p full screen, VSync off. We are on epic settings. Let me show you the visuals, and everything maxed out here with motion blur off. Now look at those frame rates, wowzers. Should be able to get more than double than those frame rates with the RTX 2080 Ti with a modern Intel processor, for instance, like an i7 or something like that. But here, actually, I think when we switch to 4K, we're gonna get like the same FPS. And that's what I showed you early in this video, that even a 12-year-old dual-core Intel processor has a stronger single core than these FX 8350. It's incredible.
Don't worry about it.
But other than that, as you could see, the game runs smooth. So if you don't mind being luck that's, you know, stuck at around 60 FPS on 1080p average, I mean, whoosh.
Yeah, look at that. A separatist ship. Haven't seen a Luke or Hulk in ages.
Yeah. Ages.
Breaking her would be big money. All right, let's go.
Also, as you could see, the temperature for the processor is like in the 30s. I mean, this processor is being barely utilized, and that is a definite bottleneck. Look how low the temperature is. It's like it's not even alive, this processor. It's frozen.
Hey, you okay?
But no stuttering or nothing like that. Very smooth. Alright, so let's take a look at what it looks like on 4K here. Once again, we're on Epic. Okay.
Yeah, no problem. I'll improvise.
See you there, pal.
Well, there you have it. Now we're at, you know, very similar frames, like I said.
Depart this Mars immediately. You are not approved trash.
I'm trash. Just not approved trash.
So in this case, you're definitely better off on 4K, because at least, you know, you could get close to 60 FPS on average.
Easy there. Come on.
Just passing through.
Careful, stabilizers out. You're Thomas. I told you to replace the stabilizer. Oh, that's pretty nice. Oh, you fixed it. Hurry up. We're close to finishing ahead of schedule. I can just about taste the credits. It's gonna be a wild night tonight. Let's get this job done.
Reckless cow.
Good to see you.
You too. You'll get yourself killed.
That's the idea. Sounds like scrap rats. Creepy. Just passing through, guys. No need to come out and say hi this time.
Well, there you have it for this game. Let's see what the next game brings. Here we have the good old Odyssey. Let's take a look. 1080p, full screen, VSync off. And we are on very high settings. Yes, of course. Definitely, you could notice some bottleneck here. Should be able to get well over 110 or so, or 100 FPS with this graphics card on these settings. But still not bad. I mean, like I said, the game is enjoyable. You know, there is use, definite use for this old processor setup still. It still holds its own.
No, fire, out! No, Scott!
And as you could see, definitely playable on 4K resolution. Should be getting about 15 more FPS, I would say, with a better processor on the same settings. So there is definitely a bottleneck in this game. Alright, so that's it for this game, and on to the last one. Now in Battlefield 5, we're going to see the same trend as in previous games. Extreme bottleneck on the 1080p. Let's take a look at the settings. 1080p full screen. We're on all ultra settings here, maxed out. Well, when I say extreme bottleneck, I don't mean like a dual core processor on the system where, you know, no matter what graphics card you have, you're gonna be at 30 FPS. But just to give you an idea, this game with this graphics card and a modern, let's say i7, I don't know, 9700K or so, you'd be literally running double FPS on 1080p, somewhere 170, 180 on average or something, you know, when everything is correct. So yeah, we're definitely holding back a lot here on the graphics card, but other than that, the game is smooth and it's very enjoyable. You know, we are maxed out. And these are very playable, enjoyable frame rates, if you ask me. So what's my overall assessment on this platform? 4K, it's still okay, you know. 1080p, you're not gonna get high FPS, so that's the bottom line. You know, I really think it's time to upgrade when it comes to this platform. You be the judge. I mean, all these modern games are working fine, but you're really not gonna get the performance you should out of these modern graphics cards. So, you know, I think it's time to upgrade. There's many great options. The computer hardware right now is very cheap. I think it's best, really good price. There's so many options, and you know, if you want to stick with these modern graphics cards, you definitely want to upgrade to something much more modern. I mean, remember again, the single core performance on this thing is really bad, really bad. We're only getting these, at least this kind of FPS, because you know, of its multi-thread. But other than that, you know, it is what it is. So let's wrap this up with the 4K. There it is, once again on Ultra everything. Yeah, and these are, you know, as you could see in 4K, these are pretty good FPS. Oh yeah, this game uses the processor pretty well. We're maxed at 100 constantly. So now we got this thing working. Well, that's it for today's video. Let me know what you guys think. Please leave any comments down below. I really appreciate your feedback. And I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.